Anjem Choudary was sent to prison on a 5.5-year sentence for the crime of pledging allegiance to the terrorist group Daesh, otherwise known as ISIS. Now, from a practical standpoint, it is very hard to argue that the removal of Anjem Choudary from public life is in any way a bad thing. Now, I am definitely happy to see that individual doing some jail time. But is it moral? And more importantly, is it done for the right reasons? Because after all, a good result based on a faulty premise is still a bad outcome over the long run. Let's explore. Hello everyone, and welcome to another installment of Freedom Alternative Research and Analysis. Okay, so for those of you who may not know, Anjem Choudary, a man born and raised in Britain who has been full kebab for decades. Now, in the last 2 decades, Choudary claimed over £500,000 in benefits from the majority white and kuffar tax-paying public, payments which he routinely used to refer in public as jihadi seekers' allowance. Now, this guy made no secret of his disdain for Britain and the Western civilization in general. He also made no secret of the fact that he actively sought to create new jihadis, and that his vision for Britain is to give rise to Britanistan, a Sharia law country in which the literal Quranic law is the only law allowed. Now, on September the 6th, a British court sentenced this individual to 5.5 years in jail, which can mean that he may serve as little as 6 months and all the way up to the full sentence. The ball is in the post-sentencing judiciary system these days, and here's where the problems lie and why I turned on the camera for this video to begin with. You see, a hate speech conviction is in and of itself flimsy, and it speaks volumes of the anal retentiveness of the judiciary if this is the only thing that they could throw at Choudary that actually stuck. The fact that he was sentenced on this particular crime, as opposed to, benefits fraud, sedition, or anything that was much closer to what Choudary did than this pretentious nonsense with hate speech. Anyway, so the fact that he was sentenced on this particular crime means that he will serve the sentence in a county jail type of facility, and not in a maximum security type of facility. Now, the reason a maximum security type of facility would have been preferable and awarded in case of a conviction for sedition, for instance, is not a fear that he would try to escape. Quite the opposite. Choudary has no reason whatsoever to fight this sentence. In fact, I would go as far as to say that this conviction is perhaps the best thing that could happen for Chowdary's long-term project. Let me put it this way. This guy is responsible for quite literally creating new jihadis. Now, finding minds impressionable enough to make them become ISIS executioners is quite hard out there, though obviously not an impossible task. However, finding such impressionable minds in jail is a piece of cake. Officially, 1 in 7 inmates in British prisons are already Muslim, but there are facilities where as much as half of all inmates adhere to the religion of special needs. Now, some facilities are referred to amongst correctional officers as jihadi prisons, and nobody suspects that the guards are being hyperbolic. Now, why would one suspect that? Most of the former Western Bloc countries who have been significantly enriched in the last 2 or 3 decades suffer from various degrees of the exact same problem, jails being the main centers for Islamist radicalization. So with that in mind, now please start thinking what happens when you toss in the most effective known radicalizer that Britain has on its own territory at this very moment. The worst case scenario, in 5 years, Choudary could create his own little militia that could be about the size of a normal company or even a small-sized battalion. Best case scenario, and with all the quotation marks implied, he recruits at least 3 or 4 people whom he turns into his loyal servants, which in Islam includes willingness to die if the leader of the cause tells you to. Now, are you scared yet? Well, you should. Or at least you should hope I will be proven wrong, because even the best case scenario I outlined here is still quite chilling. Besides, I haven't yet taken into account the fact that there are actual Islamists within prison personnel. Heck, London has an Islamist mayor, for crying out loud, so it would be utterly shocking if there were no mid-ranking officers in the prison systems that adhere to the religion of pieces. So, in that case, Choudary could use that to land himself in a facility where there is at least one more influencer, so to speak. Teaming up with another less overt propagandist would make it a recipe for disaster in that prison. I mean, in 5 years, Choudary could quite literally create new terrorism whilst in jail. And this is not me being hyperbolic. Multiple attacks in France have been coordinated from prisons. As I was saying in my video called "France is a Failed State," there are so many Islamist attacks in France that most of them barely make the news in local French papers, let alone national French media or international media. Alright, so having said that, one might legitimately wonder what is my underlying point. After all, I don't argue that Choudary should have been left free on the streets. Well, what I am arguing is that he should have been jailed on a more serious crime, even if doing so would have taken longer for the Crown to make the case. It would have been preferable for Choudary to be out on the streets one more year and then jail him for a much more serious offense that has actually happened. One of the reasons I think that is because a conviction of a more serious offense would have warranted detention in a more serious facility, one that has solitary confinement amongst other things. And no, I am not joking. This individual in a low surveillance and low control facility is a lot more dangerous over the long run than he would have been otherwise if left free on the streets. In any event, what I am saying is that it would have indeed taken a lot more of a time for the Crown to make the case, since England abolished the common law offence of sedition in 2010 and Scotland did the same in 2011. Now, only sedition by an alien is still an offence, but as much as any sane person perceives Choudary as an alien, well, he is not one, at least not in the eyes of the law anyway. Now, one may indeed be excused for thinking that I am overreacting on this one. I mean, after all, the media gives constant assurances that Choudary is not given any credibility amongst mainstream Muslims, and even the controlled media is occasionally criticizing him and reassuring everyone else that his views are not real Islam or some pretentious similar toss. Yet despite these assurances, actual jihadi recruiters consider him as the ultimate authority when it comes to big issues. I mean, heck, the now chief executioner of ISIL and narrator of most ISIS propaganda films was convinced that Chowdary's blessing of the caliphate was the only thing stopping British Muslims from joining in. And, well, he had a point, as reality proved it. Anyway, so, to sum up, I think the act of jailing Anjem Choudary is right and proper, but I also think that the premise used to accomplish that was fundamentally faulty, and as a result of that, the outcomes of this measure will be worse off than if he'd been left free for a while longer until a much more proper case could have been made against him. Basically, jailing him for inciting hatred trivializes both his crimes and his level of dangerousness to the society as a whole. It puts him in the same category with those bugged by the police for calling the policeman's horse gay or for looking too excited at a UKIP website, as the British police is keen on doing on 15-year-olds. As for the free speech angle, because I'm sure that argument will sooner or later come up, well, I don't think there is a free speech angle to take. If I tell you that in 10 years you will kiss my feet and make you obey me, and then in the next 3 to 4 years start actually slowing towards working and implementing just that, is it a free speech issue or an issue that is within the realm of criminal law? Saying that he is working to make everyone obey a 7th century code which involves extreme violence for petty infractions, in other words, threatening most of present day people with future violence, that's not freedom of expression. Especially when there's credible evidence that the threat could indeed be carried out, albeit on a smaller scale. So, bottom line, the urge to rejoice about putting this maniac on ice for a while should be tempered with a lot of caution. This might have made things worse. Now, I hope I'm wrong, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. And with that being said, thank you for watching, and I'll see you around on Freedom Alternative.